Did you know that you could use magazine pages to break an art journal page, not just as a focal image? Keep watching. I'm going to show you how. Here are the two pages that we're going to create in this tutorial. So magazine pages, these are the ones I'm talking about. There's colors, there's textures, you can get them from magazines or catalogs, and they are a source of color and inspiration that you can use to break your page. So I had some selections of corals and yellows and reds, and I'm going to use those. So I just start off and I am just ripping them, doing kind of that rip a strip collage technique that I love using with my gel prints. And basically I'm doing this in the same way. I'm ripping them, laying them down on top of my page, arranging them. I'm not sure exactly which pages I'm going to work together. My plan wasn't to do 2 pages. That's just how it happened. So I'm picking some of this with the yellow, and we've got some pattern on there, and I'm just keep rearranging it till something sticks, till I get the idea that, oh, I like this. When you're using Rip a Strip, I try not to use too many different types of papers. 2 or 3 is usually the max for a 9x12 art journal page. So I'm putting those 2 together, and then I decide I don't want the citrus one with it. I wanted the kind of, I think it was like a candy bark with the yellow and reds, and then the dark red that came from that page where it was a jacket. So once you get the idea that, yeah, I kind of like what I see here, you're going to glue it down in whatever manner you like. Now I prefer using Liquitex Fluid Matte Medium. Matte is super important. If you want to use the gel, you can. I find the liquid typically works better. Magazine pages are fairly light, so that's my preferred method. And the matte really dulls down that shine, which I like. I'm layering this up in interesting ways. Right now, I'm just putting this first layer of color and pattern down on my page. I have no plans, no idea what else I'm going to do to this page or what focal image I'm going to use on the page. Now you can go through your magazines, your catalogs, and have a whole pile of different colors and just spend a day breaking multiple pages with the magazine pages. Now I had ripped up this other one, and I know myself that these ripped up strips, I tend to lose sight of them, so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to glue them down. And I grabbed my accidental art journal, which is where all the leftovers can go, and here I'm putting the citrus one and that one that is green, orange, and yellow. I like how these colors play together better, so hence the second page. And once again, I am simply gluing it down. I love how the music notes on that one, and you get that kind of ombre kind of look that was on that one page. So lots of times the art that's in these magazine pages is great. So I am loving the coral that's kind of in that grapefruit. So I'm mixing up some Naples yellow with alizarin crimson, getting that coral color and filling in the few areas of white space that I had and adding a little bit more coral. And then I'm looking at the page and thinking, okay, do I want to put some stamping? Do I want to put some stenciling? Adding a little bit of orange or tweaking up the orange color here. But I'm liking the overall look of it. Adding a little bit of yellow just to brighten it. So I've used the magazine as the way to start my color story. These are combinations that work. They're on magazines and they caught my eye. So I'm just using what an artist has already done, a graphic artist, I guess, the ones that create these magazine pages and these ads. So it's a great way to use and then mix colors. So I decided I really liked it the way it was. I wasn't going to add any stamping, but I grabbed this tulip hexagon stencil. This is a 12 by 12 one. And I picked it because, do you see where the plastic is? Wherever the plastic is, that's where those bright, bold colors are going to show through. I'm taping this down because, well, I'm kind of working on a bulky art journal page. I'm not working flat. And I want to get fairly good stenciling. Taped it down on the side, and then I'm just using black paint with a makeup sponge, and I'm sponging off and very lightly going over the whole thing. The black with these bold colors, I'm thinking is going to be very, very showy. Now, when I put the paint on the makeup sponge, I am tapping up on my craft mat, and when I'm going through the stencil, I am not pressing down hard. I don't want the paint to swoosh under and get underneath the stencil. So as much as we are impatient and we want to go fast, caution, go slow. If you have to come back and do another layer, do another layer. If you have to tape it so it doesn't move when you're doing a lot of stenciling, do that. These are both tips to help you get better stenciling. Here I'm going over it little by little, peeking to, oh, is it working? And wow, look at that. The bolds, the brights. Now, the top hexagon isn't quite matched up. It's just blank. So I'm just laying the stencil back down and very carefully just putting in those ones. Just to finish off the look of the stencil. And making sure that that gets it dry. So I'm moving on to focal points, and there's that little bit of green, so I thought this frog would look nice, and these kind of look like lotus blossoms on a lily pad. So I cut out the frog, and I'm peeling off the 2 excess layers. If I glued the frog right onto the page, whatever's behind it is going to show through, and I don't want it to show through, so I'm going to glue the frog down onto copy paper with the fluid matte medium, give it a dry, and then fussy cut it. You will know you cannot, really fussy cut a napkin. You can water cut and get close. But again, I don't want the background to show through, so I want to put a layer in between so that my focal image doesn't get lost. But once I cut it out, I look at it on the page and it looks a little too small. I could make a lily pad for it to sit on and bulk up the frog, but instead I look through my napkins and I grab this napkin, and I will try to find the name of it and put it in the description box. But all the napkins, the frog and this one, come from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There is a affiliate link in the description box with a coupon code. I like the colors, and then I went and I picked out a whole bunch of different sentiments, typed them up, and then I have options. What I don't use on this one goes in my collage word bin and gets used at some later date. And I chose the sentiment because normal is boring. And then I went and printed it again and made it bigger because it was just a little, again, too small for the page in my mind. Now I chose this napkin. The colors in it match what's in the background. And the background looks very tropical. That tulip there kind of looks tropical-ish to me. So you can see that frog napkin would have worked. This one would have worked. It's actually several napkins would have worked. I'm edging the page to frame it with the black. And then I'm shading around the sentiment as well. That just makes it stand out from the background. I also shaded it on the focal image, but you get the idea without me showing you every step of the way. Grab this Posca pen, it's a little bit bigger one. It's going to give a wider line, and I'm just outlining kind of a line and a dot, 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 line, dot, dot, dot. Liking how this is looking. Like those bright, bold colors, and really the magazine page dictated everything. I didn't have to add much of anything. Now with this one, I proceeded a little bit differently. I'm taking gesso and putting gesso in between them. This blends the edges. It's going to make any color that I put on afterwards go in a little bit better, because I just glued these down onto raw pages. I had not gessoed them at first. This is just blending it. When I've done rip-a-strip and I don't know what to do, putting a coat of gesso like this in between seems to help, or just doing some major stenciling with modeling paste. I opted to not use modeling paste. Here I'm adding color. I'm liking that yellow color of that candy bark. So I'm adding that in. And I'm mixing it with just white gesso on the makeup sponge and going on top. So even though this was a similar color scheme to the first one, it has a very, very different feel. And that was part of my goal. This stencil I love, and I'm doing it with alizarin crimson, and adding that in just made me happy. It just worked. I'll put the name of this stencil in the description box, but it's escaping me right now. But it always looks better when I put it on than when I think. So if you're not sure about stencils, give them a try. Sometimes they really surprise you, and I'm loving that look. So I used the color that was in that coat magazine page as my color story. I'm using the same reds I'm using. Now this stencil, I do know the name of. It's called Leafy Fans, and I wanted to introduce some blue. So I'm using Prussian blue here, and I'm putting it through the stencil. And I love, love, love how that looks. It's kind of turning it into kind of a oriental feel to it. And we've got red, yellow, and blue. We've got our primary colors, and we know those will work. I'm just going to add a little bit coming off the pages just to round it out. So on the first one I did very little to what was already there. On this one I'm adding a little bit more with stamping and stenciling. Speaking of stamping, here is my dot stamp, and I'm brayering on white paint, and I'm just adding some dots. Every time you add a layer, you're pushing back whatever was behind it. Now I need to pick a focal point. So I went through my magazine pictures, and I picked this girl, and I found this earth, and I thought she's got a suitcase, travel theme, and it kind of works. works. We've got the blues that go with the background. And I thought, you know what? I like how this worked. But I grabbed a butterfly to represent travel, flight, exploring. And I like how all those things kind of work together on the same theme. Or they did in my mind. So I had a printable, a magazine, and a couple magazine pics here. Just cutting it off to get a straight edge here. And put the girl on there. And then I'm gluing everything down with my fluid matte medium again. Now, right now you might be thinking, well, your focal image isn't standing out too much, but I'm going to solve that problem in a minute. I'm just making sure that I'm giving it a good coat of gel medium or fluid medium on top so that I can do the next step. Now, I was going to put it over there, and then I realized I didn't cut out the magazine under her arm, so my background doesn't show through, but you know what? I'll put the butterfly here and cover up my oops. I went to my Embrace Possibility sentiment pack and found the one, the heart wants roots, the mind wants wings. So we got the wings of the butterfly and roots, you're grounded in earth, and she's taking off and traveling. Here I grabbed my distress crayons and I'm putting some on and just rubbing it on top. This works because it's a non-porous surface that I have. And it is kind of my last layer. I'm not planning on putting a wet medium, although if you do, you can just reapply the distress crayon. And here I'm just tweaking up the blues, making them a little bit more vibrant, making that focal image stand out a little more against a very colorful, strong background. I've just recently rediscovered my distress crayons and I am loving them at this stage. Just tweaking, they are so easy to use and they're more permanent than watercolor and different things. So if you have them in your stash, grab them out. If they're not, if you don't have them, it might be something you want to add. Here I'm just making her jacket a little bit bolder, brighter. And if it's not dark enough, just add another layer, add another layer, add another layer. The benefit, because it's water soluble, if you get it where you don't want it, or you don't like what you've done, you can take a baby wipe or a wet cloth and wipe it off. Just adding a little bit more, mixing colors, just to add some variation in tone and make it just a little bit more interesting. Now I'm shading around the globe. Now here I ran into a little bit of trouble because when I'm shading, I'm using water. And in a couple places, it did move the distress crayon. Not a lot, but it did. So what I did is I went back with the distress crayon afterwards and just put it on top. And it worked. It did. No one's the wiser. It was just mostly on the suitcase where I guess it had a little bit too much water and it did really get wet. Thank you so much for joining me on my art journaling journey today. I hope you're going to look at magazine pages, catalog pages differently and start using them to break your page. Great source of inspiration, great source of color schemes, and really, you're saving it from going in the recycling bin. Thank you if you are a subscriber. If you're not, please hit that subscribe button. Click on the bell and select the option of being notified of upcoming videos. That way, you'll get notified every time I publish a new video. Until next time, go get creative. Bye for now.